Hi, welcome back to KERN'S Customs. My name is Liz. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for coming back to the channel. If you're new here, consider subscribing to help us meet our next goal. We're almost there. We've got just a tiny bit on our way to 300. So if you could help us meet that goal, that'd be awesome. Alright, today we're going to go over some ProCreate basics. So if you're just opening the program, or if you want to set reminders, make sure you didn't miss anything. Or if maybe you're getting it for the first time for a kid or using this with students, this would be a great video for you. Alright, let's go. I'm going to show you my desktop in this video instead of just a screen share of my iPad screen, so that way you can see what I'm actually pressing and where things are around the screen a little bit easier with my Apple Pencil. There are a lot of dupes that I would suggest, or you can obviously just use your finger or just a generic stylus. If you need a suggestion for a dupe, please check out the comments down below. I've used them with students as well as suggested them to friends, and they've been good substitutes for the Apple Pencil. I do have the Apple Pencil too to go with my iPad, however. Alright, when we open ProCreate, it will either open in our project or it will open in the gallery. If it opens in a project and we want to get back to the gallery, we just have to hit gallery. And if it opens in our gallery and we want to get to a product, we can either select it or we can open a new one. To open a new project, we can hit this plus sign here and you'll have some different options. If you want a specific dimension, like square, if you're going to put it on Instagram later, you can pick it here, but we're just going to go with screen size for just a rectangle. And we're just going to go over some generic tips and tricks today to really get us started, and then each week we'll dive in further and further and further. So if you like this series or if you want to learn more, make sure you subscribe so you can see when those videos go up. If you have any specific questions or if you'd like to see anything specific, I'd like to see them down in the comments below. We can tell which tool is selected by which tool is blue. So right now I have my brushes selected, and I can dive into those a little bit further. If I select my brushes, I can see I have many options, and I actually have two sets of menus here. So I have my selections over here, but I also have a menu to the left as well. So each time I press a different one, and I can tell it's selected because it is blue once again, I will be able to see a different kind of brushes. So right now I'm in sketching, so I will see more kind of pencils, and then inking, drawing, and so on and so forth. If you are watching tutorials and you see brushes with this little swirl that looks like the ProCreate symbol, those are brushes that people have downloaded. So you might want to pay extra close attention to what the names of those are, because each of them have names, as you can see here. Or they might have the brushes they used down below. We'll go over a different video of how to download brushes and where to find some brushes, but that's just a good tip. Yours will probably end at water here, will be your last. And you can see the difference between my downloaded brushes with that little ProCreate symbol, or all of the other ones have their own little symbol as well. Another really nice section of our brushes is our recent section. So if you're going back and forth between a couple brushes, or if you have a couple favorites that you always go back to, you will find those ones here. And you can tell one of my favorites for erasing and for outlining is Syrup, because it's a nice solid brush. And speaking of that, if we hop over to options, we'll get to our eraser. And some friends can have find some issues with their eraser when they first use it. It might look like this, which we'll talk about a little bit more what this slider is for later. Or it might look a little bit different than what they want. So for example, if I go into my brush, my eraser, and it looks like this, that's not really erasing what I want. And that's because, as you can see here, my eraser can select brushes as well. So if I'm trying to create an effect, like maybe I do want that speckled effect, that could be a really cool eraser to use. However, most of the time when we're using an eraser, we want a solid erase. So I can go back to a more solid pen and actually erase what I was working on. And I can also have the recents here too. Another thing I can do is I can press and hold, and it will give me the current brush that I was using with my pencil. So you can see on my pencil here, it'll give me like the same brush. We're going to hop over to again, so we're going to do every other one to start with, and this is our color selector. So it looks like just a dot of color here. And I have a whole video on colors that I'll tag up in the cards, and I'll tag down below if you want a little bit more information on all these color options. So I can select my color here as one of the big ones that we'll talk about today. You can see that there. One of the tools I skipped over is, it looks like a little finger, and this is not going to add any color at all. It's just going to smudge around the colors that I have, and I can change the brush here as well. A lot of times I like to use a soft brush for this. For all three of these tools, our brush, our smudge, and our eraser, we can change the size as well. And that's going to be the slider bar. It might be over here or over here, depending on what your settings are for your iPad. And we can go over some different settings to customize in a future video if you're interested in that. But this is the size bar, and it will kind of be dependent on which brush you have selected, how small or how big it gets. So it gives you a little preview there. So for example, if I really change the size of that brush, it will change my smudge. So I can make it like huge and smudge a lot. Same with my paintbrush. I can change the size of that, make it really tiny or really big. When I'm working on a really tiny section, sometimes I like to zoom in and out of my canvas or my page, and I can do that with 2 fingers. So I can zoom out, or I can zoom in for a tiny section, so that way I can really draw something smaller a little bit easier. And then when I zoom out, it is much smaller on my canvas. If I'm doing the edges of my canvas, I really like to zoom out where I can see those edges to make sure I get all the way to the end. For example, like this, because if I have it zoomed in here, it will only draw to the edge of my canvas, or my visible canvas. So even though you can see I'm kind of scribbling off the edge, when I zoom out, I can't really see what I was doing past that. So I might not be exactly what I wanted. You can see that's not all the way to the edge there. All right. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about opacity, and that is this slider here. Opacity is how light or dark something is. So we'll give, maybe we'll do some snow, and I'll turn the opacity all the way up for that, and we'll change a color. Our color too, we'll do some teal. So if I do full opacity for that, it's going to cover, it's going to be like I threw it right on top, it's going to be a full coverage layer. If I drop the opacity down a little bit, it's going to be kind of see-through. So you can see, even though I'm drawing on top, here we'll do some more purple lines so we can see it a little better. So here was my full opacity. And then I have a history of colors down here that I talk more about in my colors video as well, but that's how I got right back to the color I was using before. And I'm going to drop the opacity down. And you can see it's a little bit harder to see now, and I can drop it down even more. And it's a lot harder to see now, so you can see just those couple speckles there compared to these ones back here. So that can be really nice to use for textures, or if you want something kind of like a ghost image over something else, or if you want to do some shading. So for example, if I want to do some shading, maybe I want to do some shadows here. I can lower my opacity and just have some shadows on top of that color. This is a nice place to use my smudge tool as well. Do a bit smaller. One last thing that we'll get into just a little bit today, but that I am going to make a whole video on as well, is our layers. So our last little option here, the 2 layered squares, are our layers. And you can see we've only been working on 1 layer so far today. We have our background layer and layer 1. If I add another layer on top of this, that layer will be all by itself. So it's kind of like I put a piece of paper on top of another piece of paper. So if I draw on this one, it's not going to go down to that one. But I can kind of move them and like switch them above and below each other, but they are going to work as their own separate kind of piece of paper or layer. So I'll show you what I mean by that. We use some different colors. So I'm going to draw just some more lines on here. Oops, that's huge. Just some more lines on here. And if I go to erase, it's only going to erase the layer I have. So you can see it's erasing the red, but leaving all of the other colors. So this can be cool to do. This is a great way to do outlining. Have your outline on a single layer, and then you can color behind it without coloring on top of your outline. This is a great way to do designs like we're doing here. This is a great way to try something out without affecting the rest of your artwork. As well as our eraser, if I smudge, it's only going to smudge that top layer. So you can see it's kind of smudging the red background, but it's not going to mess with those lines underneath. Also, if I, in my color video, you can see that we can drag and drop this color dot to fill an area. That will only fill the area of that specific layer. So for example, if I was trying to fill one of these dots down here, it's not going to fill. It's going to think I want to fill the whole thing. And because I'm on the layer with the red also, I'm using my back and forth arrows here. These are a great trick. You can also use 2 fingers to go back and forth and or to go back full steps instead of use your eraser. So that's another great trick. We'll do a video about gestures as well. I'm going to have to watch my playback and make a list of all the videos we want to do. Alright, so if I'm on my own layer and I try to drag and drop, it's going to do the whole thing. Alright, friends. I think that is plenty for us to try today. Please let me know if you have any questions and if there's anything specific that you would like to learn about ProCreate or any other art tools in the future. I hope you decide to like and subscribe and leave me a comment down below. Bye!